Imagine that, from one moment to the next, everything you have, your home, your job, your belongings, even your loved ones, is taken away from you. You find yourself in an unfamiliar place, not knowing if there will be a tomorrow. What would be left? How can you continue living when everything that gave meaning to your existence disappears? This was exactly the experience that Viktor Frankl had in the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. And it was from this experience that he learned one of the greatest lessons about the meaning of life. In the book Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl narrates his journey and what he learned from observing himself and other prisoners. Unlike many psychologists of the time, he did not believe that human beings were merely a product of their circumstances. On the contrary, he realized that, even in the midst of the most extreme suffering, there was still something that no one could take away: the freedom to choose how to react. Frankl developed logotherapy, a psychological approach that is based on the principle that the search for meaning is the central motivation of human life. In his studies, he noticed that those who were able to find a purpose, even in the worst conditions, were more likely to survive. This was confirmed by his own observations in the concentration camp. Those who lost hope, who believed there was nothing left to live for, usually did not survive for long. On the other hand, those who maintained a goal, whether it was to reunite with a family member, finish an unfinished job, or simply help others, had an inner strength that sustained them. This leads us to an essential question. If everything we have can be taken away, what really matters? For Frankl, the answer lay in the attitude we choose to adopt when faced with suffering. He said that we cannot avoid certain pains in life, but we can choose how we respond to them. This idea has been confirmed by modern research in psychology. A study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology showed that people who are able to give meaning to their suffering have greater emotional resilience and higher levels of psychological well-being. This means that it is not the absence of difficulties that makes someone happy, but the ability to find purpose within them. Think of people who have faced great challenges and, instead of letting themselves be consumed by pain, have turned their experiences into something meaningful. Survivors of tragedies who have become activists, parents who have lost children and created foundations to help other families, people who have faced serious illnesses and decided to inspire others with their journey. What about you? What gives your life meaning? This is a question that few stop to reflect on. We are so busy trying to avoid suffering and seek immediate pleasure that we forget that true purpose lies not in the absence of pain, but in the way we face it. Frankl argued that suffering, in and of itself, has no value. But when we are able to attribute meaning to it, it becomes part of who we are as human beings. This brings us to a fundamental point. How can we find meaning even when all seems lost? Frankl gives us three main paths. The first is through work or a mission, something we feel we must accomplish. The second is through love and meaningful relationships, because it is human bonds that connect us to something greater. And the third, perhaps the most difficult, is to find meaning in inevitable suffering, seeing it as an opportunity for growth. Now think about what you are experiencing today. Maybe you are going through a difficult time, feeling like you have lost something important or that you have no control over your life. But the truth is that, even in the worst situations, there is still something that no one can take away from you: your ability to choose how to interpret and react to what happens. And it is precisely this choice that can transform everything. If this concept resonated with you, stay with me until the end of this video, because we will go even deeper into how to apply this idea in your daily life. And if you want to receive more content that really makes a difference in the way you see life, subscribe to the channel right now. In addition to finding motivation, you will have practical tools to build a more meaningful existence. Going back to Frankl, there is a quote of his that sums up this idea well. When we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. This is the key to living a life with meaning. Instead of wasting energy trying to change what is beyond our control, we can focus on what is within our control, how we choose to respond. Recent studies support this view. Research published in the journal Psychological Science shows that people who believe they have control over their lives, even if it's just their thoughts and attitudes, have lower rates of depression and greater satisfaction with life. In other words, it's not about what happens to you, but about how you interpret and react to what happens. This brings us to another essential point. We often feel lost because we're trying to find meaning in external things, such as status, material goods, or recognition. But true strength comes from within. Frankl saw this clearly in the concentration camps. Prisoners who placed their value in something external, such as power or material goods, were more likely to succumb to despair. Those who had a greater purpose, even if it was simply maintaining their dignity, were able to endure. And here's a practical exercise. Think of something you deeply value, something that goes beyond the circumstances of the moment. It could be love for someone, a goal you want to achieve, a lesson you want to take with you. Now reflect on how this can help you face challenges in a different way. This simple act of changing your focus can transform the way you deal with difficulties. Ultimately, the great lesson of man's search for meaning is that no one can live your life for you. Suffering, loss, challenges, these are all part of human existence. But the meaning you give to them is unique and personal. And this can be the difference between living a life full of purpose or just existing. So I invite you to think about what really matters to you. What makes your life worthwhile? What keeps you going, even in the most difficult moments? If you can find that answer, you will have something that no one can ever take away from you. And that, according to Frankl, is what truly remains when everything else is gone.